G'day guys. Today we're looking at leaky gut. And what strategies and what things can help. Let's just share the screen. Our dear friend Taurian again. Yes, that's little pesky taurine found in animal foods and primarily in animal foods and bugger all or next to nothing in plants. Taurine alleviates intestinal injury by mediating tight junction barriers. And Diquit challenged piglet models. Obviously, we can't use Diquit compounds to basically injure humans. That would be unethical. So we use animal models. Obviously, taurine is expressed in all eukaryotic cell lines all the way back over millions and millions of years. So it's been around for a very long time. So it's something that all species have and all species utilize. Now, some will endogenously produce more of it. Others will have to get it in the diet. And some will have a mix of both. Humans tend to produce not a lot. Most has to be acquired from the diet, but humans can survive over a long period of time on small amounts, but deficiencies will cause more problems in the long run. We see these problems in people on plant-based diets, gut permeability, leaky gut type issues, dysbiosis, diverticulitis and all sorts of things. And to a large extent, these injuries are inflicted by, too much fiber in many cases, but beyond that, also the lack of a key nutrient like taurine that is part of the animal, part of animal foods, which has been shown in a lot of literature to protect and repair gut tissue. And that's what we're looking at here in an animal model. Anyway, the intestinal barrier contributes as an important role in maintaining intestinal homeostasis. Oxidative stress can cause critical damage to intestinal integrity of animals. This study was conducted to investigate the alleviated effects of taurine against small intestine, duodenum, jejunum, and ileum injury induced by oxidative stress. So the method, basically a piglet model. They Diquit-induced oxidative stress was employed. In addition, analysis of the intestinal morphology. So they did an analysis using these methods. Now, then they compared the results, compared with the control. So the ones with that they triggered the oxidative stress immune response, the constitutive immunoglobulin M, G was significantly changed. The taurine supplementation could restore the level of serum immunoglobulin back to where they should be. So the G and M, remember that. So oxidative stress induced serious damage in intestinal morphology, structure, basically, and tight junction barrier. Compared with the control, the villus height of intestine was significantly decreased. So those little hairline structures that basically protect the lining of your gut, they were basically reduced. The crypt depth, that means, the depth of the sort of tissue that had been affected was magnified, increased, and the height was basically reduced. And they've got basically a Villus height to crypt depth ratio were also decreased. The taurine supplementation could restore impaired morphology and even improve the crypt depth, and so reducing that, and also the basically the height to crypt ratio of the jejunum and the ileum. So then they basically are looking here at some genetic markers, which we won't go into because, you know, that would actually end up, other people want to read that, that's fine, they can go into it and look at those, but we're not going to, because otherwise it'll end up a very long video. Okay. Taurine exerts protective effects by regulating immune response and restores the intestinal tight junction barriers when piglets suffer from oxidative stress. So if you're a piglet, you've suffered oxidative stress, you will actually get, so there's a whole of intro here, talking about a whole lot of different things in terms of regards to superoxide dismutase, glutathione, all these other things that are basically also very important in dealing with oxidative stress. A lot of those things are either related directly to animal nutrition. So we'll just go on. Now, these are the actual treatment group, and this is how they structure it. So you've got a control. So that's the control. And these are the groups that basically, you know, it either had a low dose, a medium dose, or a high dose. Okay. So that's what they've actually given them in that regard. Now let me find where the other part. Okay, first we'll just go through this and then we'll look at the other part. There's, when we look at the corn, soybean meal, soybean protein concentrate, dried whey, fish meal, you know, there's all these sort of things that more or less they're very much similar. Their numbers, you can see they're all very similar, except the taurine. Everything else is pretty much similar, except in the actual, in the soybean oil. I have no idea why they've actually put this confounder in here. Even though it didn't have a negative effect, it's still, you know, the increasing in taurine amounts did have their positive effect. But why would you basically put this inflammatory seed oil in here? So I suspect if they hadn't put this at all, and they'd actually treated all the groups equally, I suspect the results of the taurine group would have been more magnified in their results, because that is an inflammatory component to the endothelium, you know, to the gut as well, not only the endothelium but also the gut. So yeah, anyway, it's one thing that I noticed and really annoyed me. But anyway, it is what it is. We're not looking at these gene expressions. People can go and look at them themselves in that regard. Okay. Okay, so as you see, the M the immunoglobulin. There's a control. There's a the one with the actual, where they hammered it with the, and that had the same diet as the control. Okay, these ones were the ones that actually had the little increases in these in the seed oil, which I was very annoyed. Anyway, as you can see, you put this in, really affects the immunoglobulin, that part of the immune system. With even a small amount of taurine, it pretty much recovers pretty well, even above the actual normal level. In this case, with immunoglobulin M, it actually, you had to go to the high doses before you actually got that sorted. So Obviously, when these go up, these tend to come down. This one, IgG, which sort of circulates within the bloodstream, within that sort of, if there's, and it clears up stuff. So if there's not much stuff that's already been cleared out by these ones, you don't really need as much of this. That will magnify as a response to clear stuff out, while the other ones are being suppressed by the actual, what is inducing this effect. So obviously the more taurine you take, the less it requires, because you've got an improvement that's already happened. So this one isn't as required. So here we're looking at the different parts of the gut: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, as we're going down. And we can see the improvements. It's very similar to the control. There's quite a bit of damage there. That's a bit improving. That's a bit improving. That's much better. Again, it's quite deranged. It's sort of a bit better, sort of a bit better. And there it's actually much better, in a better state. That's those villus, little hairline things are quite high and not being crushed, not being damaged severely. There are a bit of growth, much better growth. Okay, so as you can see here, the height, the duodenum, pretty much you have to get to the high taurine intake to restore back to the normal level of the control in that. And this is the depth, the crypt depth. You need to get to the high again to actually bring it back to the normal range. That's pretty much the ratio again, the high to get the right ratio again. And this is the height. This is jejunum. Again, you need to get back to the higher version. I have no idea why the medium one, there's actually two places where the middle level actually drops a bit, which was surprising. Maybe there's some other confounding variable that that they missed, or maybe, yeah, I'm not sure, because the sort of dose dependency is surprising. And this is the jejunum. The actual depth is actually higher in the low taurine, so you really have to go medium or high to get an improvement. And again, that's the ratio. Did the height again. And the reason for this sort of difference between the control and that is pretty much this reason here. It's the height thing. You're actually getting an increase in the height. So there's a ratio improvement. So a reduction in the depth and a much higher increase in the height. So it actually improves the gut structure. So those small intestinal villi are actually basically improved even over the control. So it shows the importance of, of taurine and bile salts as well, because this is part of the genetics. I'm not going to go into that stuff. And the mucosa, some more of that, the expression. Yep. People can check it themselves, that part. and their funding was just to basically cover this as well. The study was supported by the National Key R&D Program, the Science Technology of Chengha City, and Youth Innovation Team. So these are just basically foundations in China that basically were providing that. The conclusions, in conclusion, taurine could alleviate intestinal injury through the restoration of intestinal morphology and tight junction barrier with 0.60%. Taurine supplementation being a suitable dose. Our study provided a nutritional strategy for intestinal health. Further study is warranted, blah, 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 to elucidate, to work out the intestinal permeability, inflammation, and immune response that contributes to the intestinal pathologies resulting from oxidative stress. So that's that one. And now we'll look at this. So this is a group that they actually, in the same period, they actually produced this study. This lady's pretty much, she was heading the study, the previous one and this one. They were done concurrently, more or less. So the remainder of the other people were part of a different sort of combination to be able to do two separate. To confirm that, I wasn't able to get a copy of this. So we'll just look at the abstraction pretty much. And I'm just going to look at this main. They're talking about these 5 lactobacillus and enterococci isolated in an infant gut, and mechanistically probiotic modulation in a way increased the bile salt hydrolysis activity. So the amount, it's we're talking about an enzymatic pathway that increases the amount of bile salts, which is really important. And that also, which in turn increases taurine abundance. So in the gut, it stimulates tight junctions and suppresses leaky gut. Okay, and in this elegance, they also showed taurine increased lifespan, reduced adiposity, and intestinal permeability, enhanced physical function. The results suggest that such probiotic therapy could prevent and treat age-related intestinal permeability inflammation in elderly people. Anyway, let's go. The human origin of probiotic cocktail ameliorates aging-related leaky gut and inflammation via modulating the microbiota, taurine, tight junction access. So they're investigating this relationship. Remember, I've talked about the lactobacillus and certain types of bacterial strains, Bifidobacterium infantis and a few others, that are really important in sort of modulating the gut, playing a very important role. And the thing that actually increases these buggers and also protects these buggers is taurine. Plays a big role in there is a relationship that we're constantly noticing when these guys are much greater in abundance. We see taurine also in abundance, related again to these tight junctions. Now that's an association, but when we don't see this association, we do not see an improvement in tight junctions. So it does fulfill the Bradford Hill criteria in terms of, you know, these are closely related and interrelated and working together. And obviously these people are also looking at, like the previous one was looking at mechanisms, certain things that were improving as a direct relationship of everything else being the same, and actually even undermining it by putting a confounder that should basically make the inflammation worse by putting that seed oil, but still the extra taurine in was still basically improving things. So that was an important thing. It actually just magnified the importance of taurine as a consequence. Inflammation is a major risk factor of morbidity and mortality in older adults. All through its precise etiology, cause is unknown. Low-grade inflammation in older adults is commonly associated with increased intestinal epithelial permeability, so leaky gut in layman's term, abnormal dysbiosis, that is deranged gut microbiota, gut microbiome, the increased older population and lack of treatments to reduce aging-related microbiota dysbiosis, leaky gut and inflammation culminates in a rise in aging-related comorbidities, constituting a significant health concern. Here we demonstrated a human origin probiotic cocktail containing 5 lactobacillus, the ones that you actually get when you come out of the birth canal that I've talked about, and 5 enterococcus strains isolated from a healthy infant gut. So these are from basically a healthy infant that has got these strains that a lot of people over time will lose due to glyphosate and due to antibiotics through their life. They will either reduce them or obliterate some of them or all of them, depending. So it is a damn concern. A lot of these things can be found in animal foods as well. So if you start eating animal foods, you should start populating your gut with more of these acid-loving bacteria, and also taurine should help them along as well as a consequence. So, and they've looked at a high-fat diet inducing microbiota dysbiosis, leaky gut inflammation, metabolic dysfunction, and physical function decline in older mice. So mouse model, this one. And so they've taken these strains from the human, put it into a mouse that had basically a sterile mouse in order to basically do this experiment. Obviously, you can't do it on humans and not on babies either. So it just is what it is. And when they talk about high-fat diet, really what they're talking about is Randall cycle inducing shitloads of fat and shitloads of sugar, excess energy, pretty much. That's what we're talking about. And these strains, together with the relationship of having an effect on increasing taurine. Yes. So let's get into it. Probiotic modulated. So you can see how the body works synergistically. All these things work between each other. So probiotic modulated gut microbiota primarily reduce leaky gut by increasing tight junctions, which in turn reduced inflammation. So these ones reduce the leaky gut situation, improve the tight junctions, reduce the inflammation. Mechanistically, probiotic modulated in a way to increase bile salt hydrolysis activity. So what these little buggers are doing, we produce a certain amount of taurine in our bodies from methionine, glycine type, enzymatic pathways, but it's limited. Now, some of that will actually help with producing some bile salts, but that the more you eat, the more bile salts you'll increase. And that also has the ability of increasing this sort of activity, which in turn increases taurine abundance in the gut. That stimulated tight junctions and suppressed gut leakiness. Further, they did a further side experiment with the those little wormy type things. And they showed in those that taurine increased lifespan, reduced adiposity and leaky gut, and enhanced physical function. So they become more functional. They basically became leaner, and also had resolved their leaky gut. The results suggest that such probiotic therapies could prevent or treat age-related leaky gut and inflammation in the elderly. Or you could just basically add more taurine. And my protocol where I've talked about it, B vitamins, because these guys like B vitamins for 3 months at a 50 milligram or below. And then vitamin D as well, which plays a role in the tight junctions, and you will enhance that effect. So, and you'll restore a lot of these buggers as well. Now, as you can see here, there's a probiotic one. We can see a reduction here in the glucose, blood glucose. Also, we can see here crown-like structures. There's a probiotic, actually reduces that. The walking speed, that means the little mice become, with taurine-induced superpower, they become basically far better. Then obviously the increase in taurine, we can see actually eliminates a lot of the fatty droplets. There's a lot of fatty droplets in there. Probiotic, much less. This is white adipose tissue. So you can see the macrophage in here. We know when you get this really excess fat and all that, you eventually get this spillage out and you get a lot of macrophage going into the adipocytes, into the fat cells, and really it ends up a really inflamed mess. But you can actually see these ones are reducing. Look how very little. So that's improving the adipocytes, the fat cell situation as well. So people that have, we're talking about people, diabetics and people like that are probably going to have more of this sort of stuff. And I'm not going to bother with all the strains. Just changes the types. Because it can be some that are not as beneficial and others that are. This one's an important one, bacteroides, and their rhamnosus as well, which is another good one that I've talked about on many occasions. Don't know why they didn't actually measure the Ruteri, but anyway. Macrophage, as you can see, much lower, because we're looking at interleukins, tumor necrosis factor A, interleukin 1B, interleukin 6. This is it. That's in the macrophage challenged with LPS, sort of expression, those in the colon. These ones went up, and they usually to work in clearing stuff out. I'm not going to go into all these genetic ones, so we'll give them a miss, and those ones as well. Otherwise, we'll be here for hours. In this study, we demonstrated that the probiotic cocktail, which we isolated from an infant gut, was beneficial effects to prevent high-fat diet-induced gut dysbiosis, leaky gut, and inflammation. So basically, when we're talking about here, we're talking about Randall cycle-inducing mixed macro shit diet. along with the metabolic abnormalities and decline in physical function of older mice. This study has also untangles that the probiotic modulation gut microbiota primarily act on intestinal epithelials by reducing leaky gut, followed with inflammation instead of an action on the immune cells. This study comprehensively demonstrates how a well-tolerated human origin probiotic therapy modulates the gut microbiota, enhances the abundance of beneficial metabolites like taurine. Got it? So as your gut improves, your taurine metabolites in your gut levels improve as well. So obviously, if you've got gut problems, I guess putting some of this sort of stuff in until everything starts working again properly is probably a good idea, because otherwise you're chasing your tail. Most people are running around on medications and doing other things, and they're not resolving their issue, which reduces leaky gut. Got it? These metabolites like taurine, which reduce leaky gut, improve healthy lifespan. I suspect a lot of you people want an improved healthy lifespan. As a larger proportion of the world's population gets older and demands interventions to address age-related comorbidities. I'll come back to that. Let me just read the other part. Like obesity, diabetes, hepatic steatosis, so basically liver issues. That would have, a lot of fibrosis and all that sort of stuff. So again, taurine helps there as well. Movement and decline increases. So the ability of people to move around decreases. It's sort of the movement decline increases. They use basically they just basically mean that people ability to move, that have got enough energy to move around, sort of really goes to further down. Because these comorbidities are commonly associated with dysbiotic gut microbiome, leaky gut and inflammation, interventions that modulate the gut microbiota and resolve dysbiosis are good candidate approaches. Older people have an even higher susceptibility to such comorbidities when exposed to a higher caloric intake than younger counterparts. What they actually mean is Randall cycle inducing compared to younger people that can, tolerate more of that. That was smart. Our underlying biology of this susceptibility in the context of high-fat, Randall cycle inducing diet and the preventive strategy are poorly understood. Well, because they don't really understand a lot of things. Here we demonstrated that a human origin probiotic therapy prevents high-fat diet-induced metabolic dysfunction, namely glucose intolerance. Well, just get rid of the shit. Insulin resistance, hepatic steatosis, fatty liver, and fat tissue inflammation in older mice. Reduced physical function, increased inflammation, and we see that with older people, that they have reduced physical capacity to move, get up out of a seat, and increased inflammation are made a risk factor and increased morbidity and mortality of obese older adults. Probiotic therapy reduces both of these risk factors. Our findings indicate that such probiotic therapies could be beneficial for preventing age-related metabolic dysfunction, physical decline, inflammation, and may promote healthy aging. Anyway, now if we look at some of these things, Look at taurine levels, way up. Look at total bile acids, way up. Glucose utilization, fine. This is bile salt, the BSH activity. So that pathway is actually improved, which means that you can actually produce more of this to get more of this. Propionate and butyrate are also increased. As you can see. We don't life expectancy. So there's less leaky gut. Physical activity goes up. Average lifespan improves. So, yep, I'm not going to look at the genetics. I'll leave that for another day. And that's, oops. Yep. So they basically got a bit of funding from a number of these organisations, including the Department of Defence, which I found surprising. But I suspect, they want to know what they could do to help their own. Because remember when I spoke last time about, 30% of their troops are available. They've got something like 70% with all sorts of issues, and they probably want to resolve some of those issues in those people. So that was the human cocktail that increased short-chain fatty acid production. The take-home message, guys, is that taurine plays a big role in leaky gut. Bile salts also play a big role in leaky gut. So, they're interacting with the immune system. They're interacting with the gut directly, and they are involved in the healing process. Taurine begets more bile salts. More bile salts help actually improve gut taurine levels as well. The only foods that basically can furnish a certain level of taurine are meats, animal foods. This is the reason why we notice that people, when they leave a veganurized or a plant-based diet or whatever, they go to a keto diet or something like that, they don't get true resolution. I mean, even Bart, years on doing keto on and off and all of that, still didn't get full resolution. Once you get to a carnivore diet and you get more taurine levels in the system, this is what's improving and fixing, sorting out the problem. It is this interaction, this complex interaction between the gut microbiome and these animal-based peptides. That's what it really is. So we've got these protein components that are coming in from the diet, these amino acids, that is, they're actually playing this role in the gut and fixing the problem. So ultimately, what the story here is, meat heals your gut. That's the take-home message. And meat improves the actual gut function, reduces gut permeability, reduces dysbiosis, and improves the gut microbiome. That's what we see when we combine these things and bring them together. One influences the other and improves the other. They work synergistically together. And that's really the take-home message. And so this is the reason why I've actually encouraged people to take higher dose when they've got gut problems, to take higher doses, or gallbladder issues or whatever, higher doses of taurine to resolve these issues. And they do resolve them. They do see a lot of reductions in inflammation in their gut and improvements in the functioning of their stomachs, the functioning of their gut, the functioning of their gallbladder, the functioning of their liver, the functioning of their kidneys, everything that is involved directly or indirectly with digestion is improved. That is the absolute take-home message of this video. Anyway, hope you liked it. See yous. This is a supplemental covering the sort of the villi and the crypt depth. That means how deep it is, depth. I needed to basically explain that better than, so I'll just quickly share so this makes sense. So here, the villi, Villus, and here's the crypt. So obviously, if the villi are actually damaged and stuff like that, they've got less absorption, because here the microvilli where the absorption is. So if you've got a depth, you know, this is larger than this, you're going to absorb less, in a sense. So that area where it showed the actual the increase in the Villus height, which the study talked about. So that, and it's got the ratio, the Villus to crypt depth ratio, which is this part here, compared to this part. When you look at all research, it corresponds to an improvement in digestion. So the higher the ratio of villi to crypt depth, there is a higher, and this is in the, it corresponds basically in the literature to an improvement in digestion and absorption of nutrients. So that's the sort of thing. Let's just go back there for a sec to the actual study. As you can see, we'll look at the different parts of the, so jejunum. So there's not a big amount here. It's slightly better in the high taurine levels, and you can actually see the VC ratio is slightly higher. You don't see a lot there, but in the duodenum, but in the jejunum, on the other hand, you do see a marked smaller depth, slightly higher villi, and the ratio is quite significantly improved. So from that part, you'll actually see improvements. And then the ileum as well, you can actually see that the depth drops considerably on a high taurine diet, and at the ileum, you see massive increase in the VC ratio. So in the other two parts of the key digestive tract, the small intestine, we see this sort of thing, but then in the ileum, we see this massive difference and improvement. So across the board, we're seeing an improvement in the VC ratio. So that is improving, generally speaking, the absorption. And that's the key, and that's the sort of the other key take-home message. That taurine actually improves, not only reduces gut permeability and leaky gut, but it also enhances nutrient absorption and better digestion. So that was an important point to make. So when we talk about taurine, what we mean is meat, the flesh of animals, improves digestion and absorption of nutrients. That's the take-home message that you get from what I just described. Anyway, that was a supplemental. See yous.